Multiseries Racing. And I think, get our next chair up here. Thank you. And we're going to introduce our next moderator here. You know, he's known as the voice of God. Many of you know our next moderator, lead race announcer for NBC Sports. I texted him and I said, look, I need you to tell me one thing that this audience isn't going to know that you want to share. And his response was, oh, I thought we were going to do that live. And I'm like, I am just not that talented. So, Rick Allen, what is the one thing that you would like this audience to know about you that they do not currently know?
Well, now you changed it because you said what I'd like them to know. I thought it's what they wouldn't know about me.
Oh,
and the one thing they probably wouldn't know about me is in 1992, I was ranked 47th in the world in the decathlon.
Give it up for Rick Allen.
And I talk. So, Jonathan, you took care of letting everyone know what we're about to discuss? All right. Well, for some reason, Emily gave everybody my cell phone number, apparently, so you guys can text me messages during this question and answer area. So go ahead and fire those at me. We have that. And I'd like to bring out our panel, the four guys that are going to take care of these seats and talk a little bit about multi-series racing. And we'll start off with the president of Team Penske and Penske Racing, Tim Cindric. Bring Tim out here. And not too far behind, NASCAR Hall of Famer Ray Evernham, who has owned and been a crew chief of about every car that is around. Ray, come on out. The president of Colleague Racing, let's bring out Chris Rice. Fun fact about Chris, I think your mom still runs South Boston Speedway, is that correct?
I think you're right, yes.
Okay, just making sure. And then our final panelist that will be up here is probably the most versatile as far as a driver and owner. Let's bring out Rick Ware of Rick Ware Racing. So, guys, we're talking multi-series racing today, and let's just, if we could, go down the line and talk about the different types of racing that you guys are involved in today. Now, I know, Rick, when we get to you, you could probably fill up the entire panel of things that you've been involved with, but let's talk about the racing series and different classes that you guys are a part of today. Let's Tim start us.
We'll start off. Team Penske, obviously we have the 3 entries in the NASCAR series at the Cup level now. The IndyCar series, we also have 3 entries there. And then this year we embarked on a new sports car program with Porsche. So we run 2 entries here in the IMSA program, and then there's 2 in the World Endurance Championship based in Mannheim, Germany.
Okay. And Ray, I know currently like I said, I think you have about every car that has ever been made, but Goodwood and different things, you're currently involved with what different series?
I'm still involved with things with the NASCAR and Xfinity stuff through my association with Marcus Smith and SMI, but I've been working with a lot of the vintage programs, involved in HSR and SVRA and the things that are going forward with that. So really not as much as Penske or Ware, but still some of the things that are happening around the country with vintage cars.
They're more fun.
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, that's a lot cooler than what we have. We have 3 Xfinity cars and run 2 full-time Cup cars and sometimes a 3rd car in the Cup Series. So, yeah, we have 5 total entries in NASCAR, and I feel like that's a lot. I don't know how Tim nor Rick do it. So,
Rick, fire away.
We have the 2 Cup entries in NASCAR. We run, this year we're running LMP2 in IMSA. We are partners with Dale Coyne in the 51 IndyCar as well. We run the NHRA Top Fuel dragster for the championship with that. And we run the AMA Pro Series flat track championship and the World Supercross championship.
Let's talk, how do you balance the different series as an organization? How do you figure out where the importance is for your organization to put what time and effort into each different series?
Well, the NASCAR being the cornerstone of what we've done for decades, that's consumes probably the bulk of our time, both in need and in the volume of races. You know, of course, I think all of us here will talk about you have to have really good people, and I feel like the people that we have probably do the job of three people to make all this happen. We try to really cross-brand a lot of our marketing to make sure that everybody's involved. So there's really nobody gets any preferential treatment. By volume, we're doing more NASCAR racing for a series and maybe something like the IMSA, might be 7 or 8 races. But we try to maintain a balance across the marketing platform. But by need and necessity, you know, NASCAR probably consumes the majority of our issues and times, you know, right now.
And Chris, what about between Xfinity and Cup? How do you kind of spend your time?
I don't do a good job at it, first off. I'm still learning how, but I spend a lot of time with our Xfinity guys because I feel like that's our, you know, stepping stone to get to Cup. So I spend a lot of time on the Xfinity side, and then the Cup side, I'm there each and every weekend, and we're kind of making our way through it, understanding how the Cup program goes, and thanks to Richard Childress himself for helping Matt and myself and trying to figure out what's the best ways to do different things. So I don't really do a good job at it, so I'm probably not the one that needs to, because I go to every single race, and I have a buddy that tells me every time that I'm going to have to slow down at some point. But spend most of my time on the Xfinity side. Even on Mondays when I get up, I go to the Xfinity shop, and then spend the time on Tuesdays with the Cup guys.
And Tim, I'm going to come to you next. And obviously your role as president is just a title, more or less, because you're also a strategist for the race team. You do so many different things, and a father of one of the drivers. So how do you kind of divide your time as far as running an organization, and then also the different tasks that you have within that organization?
So wherever the boss wants me. That's the easy way to put it.
Wherever
But,
Megan wants you?
Yeah, well, that boss as well. But some days that's a different place.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, I think, as Rick said, it all comes down to people. And as we continued to expand, you know, I initially started in the IndyCar world, and that's where I originated. My father was an engine builder and kind of never really had a real job other than racing. But very fortunate to be able to structure it and find really good people to help support kind of what we do day to day. And we have a leader in each of our I call it three disciplines: sports cars, you know, stock cars, and Indy cars. And there's one lead person or managing director with each one of those that reports to me. And yeah, on the race weekends, you know, I was telling the story earlier to Chris that you know, when I went to work for Roger in 1999, I'd been calling races for Bobby Rahal when I worked for his organization, and I came to work for Roger and said, "You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to have this racing school thing." And I said, "So, from a race strategy standpoint, who do you think should do the race strategy on the Indy cars?" And he says, "Well, you're going to do one car, and I'm going to do the other." I'm like, "Okay, I'll do that in my spare time."
Okay.
And I've been doing it ever since.
Shift gears a little bit here with you, Ray. It seems as though when you were crew chief for Jeff Gordon, here was this hot shoe that came out of California that was, you know, open wheel. He raced dirt, and then he went and became a Cup superstar, but didn't do the other things that he had done growing up. But now we're starting to see a shift, and to the negative or detriment of Hendrick Motorsports this year, with Chase Elliott getting injured when he went out doing snowboarding. Alex Bowman was racing a sprint car when he hurt his back. How do you determine, if you have multi-series, if you have different disciplines that you have a part of your organization, how do you determine if a driver can do those just because of the possibility of injuries or maybe taking him out of his primary job?
Well, if it's within the organization, actually, you know, like Tim just explained, it's a matter of what that cross-pollination is with the different manufacturers. But, you know, when I look at what Kyle Larson's doing now and versus what Jeff Gordon was doing, it's as much about opportunity and timing because, if you look back into the early days of IndyCar, it wasn't uncommon for Mario or somebody to be in a midget, a Formula One car, and then go run Indy announcers and the Allisons from NASCAR, every modified race around. And then as the sport grew, in the 90s and sponsorships really started to come up and owners and sponsors wanted those drivers exclusively. And they were paying them good money to be exclusive, and at that time the drivers really were a big part of how the cars were set up. So you didn't want to get your driver confused on what he should be feeling, and the new radial tires were fairly new back then. You don't want him bouncing with a sprint car with a wing, and you wanted him helping you set the car up. And then as time went on, obviously the sport had a little bit of a setback, and they brought in different sponsors, and a lot of drivers weren't getting paid that exclusive money. And also what changed is the tools. The tools they set the car up with now, so much more data that now the drivers really have to adapt to what the computer or the simulation says the aero platform for the car is, or the line that they have to do, or where they should brake. So these drivers that are running multiple series now are actually working on their craft because they're not worrying about a feel anymore, right? The computer's telling them what they have to drive the car like. They're learning to adapt to different cars. And what Kyle Larson does, he's going to do no matter what. He's just a phenomenal guy. But, if you look all the way back, and I think the first one I think that really started it was Kyle Busch, right? So maybe it's just being named Kyle. I don't know. But, he late models and trucks and Busch, and he was figuring out how to make that into winning on Sunday. And as long as the guys or girls or drivers can do that, that may be the path now to becoming a better race driver.
All right, Chris, what about AJ? He runs on your Xfinity side, he runs on your Cup side. Would you allow your drivers to do something outside of those two, say, primary jobs of your organization?
Yeah, we love for them to. I told Justin Haley, I said, you need to run your dirt car more often. I do agree with they're working on their craft because, you get in these Cup cars now, they're all the same, right? Like, yes, we've watched Kyle Larson do what he done. You and I talked about this on Sunday, but they get stuck in 20th, they're stuck in 20th. They get stuck in 15th, they're stuck in 15th. I've watched Tim's team this year from one end of the spectrum to the other. The cars are stuck wherever they're at, so they got to learn how to figure out a different way. And you watch Kyle Larson in that high limit series, and it's just amazing. Come from 10th or wherever he comes from, he's working on himself, and he brings that to Sunday. He drove us at Darlington, and we were actually having that conversation today before I left the office about what did he bring for us at Darlington. I said about 6.5 tenths is what he brought, and it's because of his craft, where he runs on a racetrack. We go back in the fall, and we're much slower, different place where we're running on a racetrack. So I do agree with these guys going and racing other series. Now, they got to be smart about it, right? Like, they can't be going out here just doing something in a bad car or something that's not safe. I think they need to be safe, but they need to work on their self and the craft because all these drivers are good now. Whether, no matter what series they're in, they don't forget how to drive. And AJ Allmendinger hasn't forgotten how to drive, whether he won on Sunday or he finished 20th. He doesn't forget that. It's just how do we maximize each and everything, and that's what we have to do. So those guys need to go and drive, I feel.
If Justin Haley comes to you and says, "Hey, man, that Top Fuel dragster looks pretty cool," you're gonna let him go out there and give it a run?
Well, anything's possible, and we're open to all it. We try to cross pollinate all we can. We actually have taken some of our other drivers and riders to other events for sponsor reasons. We brought one of our sponsors that were an 8-year sponsor in NHRA to their associate on their first Daytona 500, and brought Clay Milliken down to the 24 hours and the Indy 500. And so we try to leverage that. It's easier to do with the other disciplines over to NASCAR because we never quit racing. It's hard to get a NASCAR guy to go somewhere on the weekend because they're always driving. But there was a lot of talk on potential doing some doubles and things like that because we still haven't figured out what we're doing next year in the 51 IndyCar, and obviously we know we're going to be at the 600 in Charlotte. I don't know that it's going to get put together, but those kind of conversations happen, and those are again some of the unique things that we can talk about doing. We just got to keep looking at every opportunity.
All right, Tim, you must juggle everybody's driver schedule because you have had IndyCar drivers that will run in IMSA, that will do, a 24-hour race or something like that. How do you manage, or do you guys have a policy within the organization that they can run other series within your organization?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I think it's for all the reasons that all these guys have mentioned, they love to do it, but from a case-by-case perspective, you have to ask what's being compromised. Okay, there's the aspect of getting hurt or whatever else, but a lot of things we do in life are dangerous depending on who defines danger. But for us, you have to deal with the politics of, okay, in a sports car, we have Mobil 1 sitting on a Porsche right now, and we've got Shell sitting, or Pennzoil sitting on all of our other Indy cars. So you have to know where those boundaries are when you put Joseph Newgarden in last week to go run the Petit Le Mans, the 10-hour race. And when you look at the Cup Series and the 38 weekends and everything that they have to do versus a sports car program that might only have 11 weekends of racing, although there's endurance races or whatever else, then you have an IndyCar series that has 17 races or what have you, and 6 or 7, whatever it is, the months of off-season are so much longer. That off-season is really the time to continue to stay sharp and be competitive. But anytime you do that during the season, I think you have to be sure that, especially at the level of the drivers that Roger employs, the expectation is all of them. There's no A driver, B driver, C driver, and all these drivers can make a living, a very good living, doing just that one car. Right. So this isn't a matter of how they're going to eat next week. So they have to look at that and say, how is that going to help our organization? Because it has to help our organization, and it can't compromise their preparation. And the preparation that these drivers have with all the data they have and the video and all that, I think people would be amazed at how much preparation goes into a super speedway race. Just it's grown over the years, and people say, well, you just hold your foot to the floor. And, it's chance at the end, for who's up front, who's crashed, and who hasn't. But I think they put sometimes as much emphasis into how they prepare for a super speedway race all week with their spotters, with the data, with other drivers, and how that strategy is going to be into that race. You don't see any of that. And if they're off racing sprint cars, 2 or 3 weekends a night, they're not doing that. Right. So there's a reason why some of them, in my opinion anyway, are very, very good drivers, but they aren't typically champions. It takes that extra little bit to go over the top. So for us, I think we look at it as case by case. I think Roger has the reputation of maybe not wanting the drivers to drive so much in other series, but I think, again, he looks at it as that's the biggest asset that the team has, really, is the guy behind the wheel once you give him that car. And he's been in situations before, and he's looked at drivers, and I don't know how many times I've heard the Gary Bettenhausen story. Some people have never heard of Gary Bettenhausen, but Ray, I know you have, and you heard it many times before I did, that he's going to be a top shelf IndyCar driver in the early 70s, and Roger tells him, hey, you just need to stick to this. And he goes and runs Syracuse in a sprint car and, ends up losing the mobility of his arm for the rest of his life and really never comes back as the same type of driver. And, the backup quarterback's not ever as good as a starter, right?
What's the most beneficial thing about multi-series racing?
Well, for us, we needed to fuel our race team and our platform sponsorship-wise. It's one of the few things that can differentiate RWR from another team, what we have to offer. Whether the dollar amount is different or the same in the value add, and I think that's very important to us from a business standpoint. And I love racing, so I try to justify it as much as I can.
I know, Chris, you love racing.
Oh, I love it, yeah. People, and partners would be exactly why we do it.
Okay. right?
With my business hat on, it's those efficiencies, but with my engineering hat on, it's that group IQ and the ability to learn and get better.
Yeah. Tim?
Yeah, I think it's also, as Rick said, I think the diversification and how you diversify your team relative to everybody else's or differentiate, and then the flexibility that you have internally, whether it's with your sponsors and the leverage that you have, and obviously, exposure is what you need. And from our organization, Roger isn't in it to, it's not his core business from a financial perspective, but at the same time, it's the public. It's a public image. It's where the brand Penske is built, and he doesn't necessarily have a marketing budget for the brand Penske. It comes through all these different series, but that the success of those series, they have to be successful, for it to be worthwhile in his mind.
Gentlemen, thank you.
I want to share
yeah,
a quick
Rick?
story. About a year ago, I was sitting at a table at a restaurant during Indy, sitting next to Bud Dinker and Mr. Penske, and we had just kind of talked about this new Porsche program coming on, and I had asked him, what's his favorite kind of racing? And he just paused very quickly, and he said, if there's a race somewhere, I just want to race it. And that was his answer. And I'm like, that kind of says it all.
Yeah. Racers at heart. Guys, thank you so very much. We appreciate it.